Welcome, it's Michael Murray with Benzinga. I'm here with Gerald Commissiong, the CEO of Todos Medical. In the news this week, we saw Pfizer land a massive $5.3 billion deal with the United States for their oral antiviral pill, which is called Paxlovid. It looks like they're going to produce 10 million courses of treatment while they're awaiting their EUA approval. We have Gerald Commissiong, the CEO of Todos, here to unpack this news. Welcome, Gerald. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So we're excited to get your take on this. The Biden administration set aside $3.5 billion for oral antivirals. It looks like they just spent over $5 billion on this deal alone. So where does that leave Todos with its Tollovir?
Well, I think it's great to see that the government is recognizing the fact that the oral antivirals are a key part of the strategy, and we know that it's just the beginning. The practical reality of what's going on is that there's not a lot of testing out there, and both the Merck and the Pfizer pills only work if you take them early on, shortly after you've been diagnosed. So if you don't have a lot of testing, that means you have a lot of people that are going to be waiting for results, and you're going to miss that window. So for us, we think our drug works in the same area. So it will work, early on, but it also works later. So it works to keep you out of the hospital, most likely. And where we're testing it is to get you out of the hospital. And so if our drug works to get you out of the hospital quickly as an antiviral anti-cytokine, we definitely expect, given the same mechanisms of one part of our product, that it'll work to keep you out of the hospital as well as to prevent you from getting very sick. So for us, we see this as a great, it's a great validation of the strategy. It's absolutely a great validation of 3CL protease inhibitors in general, but it's just the tip of the iceberg of what the country's going to have to spend on antivirals if we're going to conquer COVID.
Got it. Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, your drug Tollovir targets the 3CL protease, and so does Pfizer's drug Paxlovid. So what makes your drug different than Pfizer's drug or Merck's drug, molnupiravir for that matter?
So really, there are really kind of two things you got to look at. One, we use natural ingredients, that are known to be safe. So the fact that we're using safe ingredients is dramatically different than what's being used by both Pfizer and Merck. So the Merck drug, as you've seen in the approvals, is limited in who they give it to. They don't want to give it to pregnant women. They don't want to give it to women who are going to become pregnant. In the trials, they made you sign a waiver saying that you were not going to have sexual intercourse that could result in pregnancy because they're worried about mutagenesis. Mutagenesis is where you have RNA that is mutated substantially. And that creates a number of issues potentially down the line in terms of reproductive activity as well as cancer. So those are the risks with the Merck drug. With the Pfizer drug, the 3CL protease part of the drug, we think is likely quite safe. But because they're not using a natural compound, they're using a chemical, a protease that actually dissolves quickly in the body. It's metabolized quickly. And because of that, they're worried that it's not going to be at high enough concentrations for long enough time to have activity. So what they did is they paired that with another drug called ritonavir, which is an HIV drug. And the purpose of that drug is to extend the half-life of the protease, which is a good strategy. The problem is that also comes with side effects, particularly drug-drug interactions, because it's not only going to extend the life of the Paxlovid side of the 3CL protease inhibitor that Pfizer has, it will also extend any other types of drugs that people are taking that interact, and there's a long list. So the fact that we have a natural product and the fact that it's safe, and we know it's safe, as compared to those two, that's one side. Now, the other side is neither of those two products have anything that is anti-cytokine that addresses the cytokine storm, the hyperinflammation. And that's what really drives people to feeling sick. That's what keeps people in bed. And that's what drives people to the hospital. So neither of those drugs have that. And so, we feel as though we have a very strong 3CL protease inhibitor. In our lab, we have compared our 3CL protease inhibition with Pfizer's. We've also looked at, how our drug compares to Merck's in our lab, and we're very confident that given what we're trying to do, given the dosing schedule we're providing and the safety profile we have significant competitive advantage versus both. But given they're big and we're small, we went to areas where they're not. That's why we focused on hospitalized. That's where we're going to focus on moderate. And that's why we think we can go after pediatric as well, because, kids get COVID too, as you know, and we think it's highly unlikely they're going to, give an HIV drug to kids. And we think it's highly unlikely they're going to give a drug that we know potentially causes cancer or has reproductive issues to kids.
Got it. Okay, now switching gears just a little bit, Gerald, what do you think the best molecular target is for COVID-19?
Well, all the data we have right now clearly shows that it's a 3CL protease if you want to stop the viral phase. That's why Pfizer's drug seems to be so much more effective than Merck's, seems to be way more effective than all the other RDRP targeted drug, because the 3CL protease, really it's responsible, we're finding now, for three things. One, it stops the ability of the virus to cut itself. And if the virus can't cut itself, then it can't multiply and go into infect other cells. So that's one, obviously, critical component. Two, it looks like the 3CL protease is in much higher concentrations. It's the first thing the virus does when it hijacks cells. It produces about 70x 3CL protease. And the reason it does that is because that 3CL protease goes out throughout the body and basically turns off the immune response by cleaving something called NEMO and inhibiting something called galectin-8. Both NEMO basically is the alarm system through the NFK beta pathway that triggers a cellular response to a viral infection, and therefore you have an early response, an innate immune response. So you don't get that in COVID, and that's why you have so much replication so early on in the viral phase of the disease, because the body is not responding because its immune system has been shut off at the cellular level. The other thing that a recent study came out showed is that 3CL protease also it activates something called galectin-8, and galectin-8 is closely associated with bad outcomes. And so, if you can inhibit both of those things, you can stop the 3CL protease from deactivating NEMO so that the alarm system is there, and you can turn down galectin-8, which is highly associated with bad outcomes. You're seeing positive impact. And so we think going forward, if you're going to be building a combination product that'll have a combination of antiviral and anti-cytokine, the way we've done it is the way to do it, with the 3CL protease as the viral target.
Got it. Okay, very insightful on that phase. As we start to close out here, can you speak to the future a little bit? Do you have any plans to use Tollovir in early stage disease and try to compete with somebody like Pfizer?
Absolutely. So, what we decided to do, again, as a small company, is we took a product that we know works and we qualified the heck out of it using the natural product so that we could have, deliver to the marketplace a very safe product that has good, strong efficacy, and that will also make you feel better now. We discovered within our formulation the compound that is responsible for the 3CL protease inhibition. That's a new discovery. It's not something that other people think it is. And so we will, as the next step in our program, we're going to have a next gen. It's not just about the current formulation of Tollovir. We will be doing a new chemical entity that will ultimately, likely, because of the way we're going to be putting it together, not with structure-based design, but with mechanism, we will be putting together that next phase. So, from a manufacturing perspective, we can produce tens of millions, potentially into the hundreds of millions of bottles of pills, courses of treatment. We think that that's what's going to be needed for, the hospitalized market and the moderate market, the people that fail because they weren't tested early enough, or there's not enough supply of Paxlovid, or whatever the reason they fall through the cracks. So we will be treating those people with that volume. With that being said, we do, especially in certain markets, think that you can move this upstream even earlier. And if I'm a physician and I have a product that is approved and I know that it has strong 3CL protease inhibition activity, it's natural, and it has anti-cytokine activity, I may be inclined to give it to some of my patients earlier in the process if I know that they're at high risk of progressing, because you don't want those people who have downregulated immune systems and whom hyperactivity is likely to occur, to go down that path and ultimately need additional things. So, from our perspective, we're going to be laser focused on getting the hospitalized data proving that our product works in the later stages. And based on the mechanism of what's going on, we think that ultimately we'll gain adoption earlier, especially if it continues to show efficacy, and we will follow that up with trials.
Amazing. A lot to pay attention here. A lot of valuable information as well. Gerald Commissiong, thank you so much for joining us, speaking on this news, but also what Todos is working on.
All right. Thank you very much.